I'm going to talk about a couple of more advanced topics that are mentioned in the PMD Pro Guide, but are really talked about more during the PMD Pro 2 course than they are during the PMD Pro 1. I find them very interesting concepts. The first one is called Fast Tracking the Schedule. And fast tracking a project schedule takes activities that would normally be completed in sequence and completes them in parallel. For example, starting a later activity in a sequence before a previous activity has been fully completed, knowing that the product or service will be maintained. And there is a risk that comes with fast tracking. Quality may suffer, or sometimes you'll need to actually rework later. Now let's see if you understand this concept by looking at this diagram of the latrine building case study that we used during the course. So fast tracking, building the latrine structure at the same time as digging, knowing that it will fit when installed. So you see two different network pathways here. The first one is the original one, and it takes 25 days. And you remember that you add all of the days on the pathway, and you'll see that adds up to 25. The fast tracking is done to reduce the number of days for completion of this component of the project or the project as a whole. So that this second example is reducing the project from 25 days down to 19 days. And it's done by taking the structure activity out of the critical path and putting it into a parallel path so that it can be done simultaneously. The way that that can be done would be by hiring more people to do it, or maybe purchasing a structure from someone who's a vendor who might build it for you. This solution has also reduced the number of days to build the structure from 7 to 1, so it suggests that maybe they're using some mechanized tools. But the main thing is that they've reduced the number of days from 25 to 19. Okay, a quick quiz. I'd like you to fill in these two blanks. Fast tracking a project schedule takes activities that would normally be completed in blank and completes them in blank. The answer is it takes activities that would normally be completed in sequence and completes them in parallel. The second concept is called crashing the schedule. Crashing the schedule means adding additional resources to the critical path to accelerate progress. However, without necessarily getting the highest level of efficiency. So remember that crashing will have the distinct difference from fast tracking in terms of reducing the level of efficiency. An example would be adding an additional person to complete an activity originally designed for a single worker. So the extra person is the additional resource, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the work is going to get done twice as fast. The risk is that you may assign additional resources with limited tools to complete the task, therefore lowering the efficiency. For example, you may add a resource to work 5 days and only shorten the task completion by 2 days. Here's the example from the latrine case study. You'll see the original critical path is 25 days and the crashed path is 21 days. And the way that they've done that is by reducing the hole digging from 14 days to 10 days, and they may have done that by adding an additional person. They've kept the install latrine cap the same, and they've reduced the building structure from 7 days to 1 day, perhaps adding additional people to that task as well, and the audit is the same. There's a potential loss in efficiency when you crash. There may only be space for a single worker to be digging in a latrine hole. A second person may just be standing around most of the time. So a quick review on crashing. Fill in these blanks. Crashing the schedule means adding blank blank to the critical path to accelerate progress, however, without necessarily getting the highest level of efficiency. Crashing the schedule means adding additional resources to the critical path to accelerate progress. Now that you've heard about both fast tracking and crashing, tell me, what are similarities between fast tracking and crashing? There are lots of similarities. Both fast tracking and crashing are aimed at reducing the scheduled time. For both, critical path tasks need to be done in parallel to reduce the schedule, and both involve changes to the critical path. So the big difference with crashing is that you don't necessarily maintain the efficiency of the project. Now take a look at another example, the one that we've been using about the half-day workshop, and notice that I've put in units. Let's assume that those are days, so you have 1 day allocated to establish workshop objectives, half a day to select participants, 1 day to invite or confirm participants, and you see the dependencies by the arrows. I'd like you to look at this and tell me what could be done to fast track this project. Well, there could be a number of solutions. Most of them will involve putting more of the activities that are done in sequence that have dependencies in parallel or simultaneously. And you'll see what I've done here is to take the select participants box or activity and do it in parallel with establishing the workshop objectives, so that instead of taking an extra half day to select participants, we can select participants in the same day that we're establishing workshop objectives. The other change is that instead of taking a half day to conduct the evaluation, we could do that as part of the workshop. So I've done evaluation in parallel so that you now have conduct workshop and evaluate, so you've saved some time by making that adjustment. Take a look at the same network diagram and come up with a way that you could crash this project. There are a number of things that could be done, but the solution that I came up with to crash was to hire an external agency to handle some of the workshop logistics. So you'll see that instead of doing the arranging for transport, identifying options for the workshop venue, securing the venue and equipment, and making payments for venue and equipment, I've decided to outsource those to another organization or agency. Now, the risk of doing that is that they may not be very efficient. They may cost a lot, and that's the primary difference between fast tracking and crashing. Now, a question of application again. How will you use Gantt to improve your project management? I trust that this has been useful and that you are more able to transfer the learning to your real work and to be able to see the effects of using project management knowledge and tools in your real work. If you still have questions, please attempt to find someone who can provide you with some answers and advice.